What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. Today, we have my 53-man roster prediction. 25 plus players will get cut within the next few days. And so, with the deadline coming up Tuesday at 4 p.m., I want to give my 53-man roster prediction. Teams, of course, cut down from 90 to 85 2 weeks ago. And last week, they had to cut down from 85 to 80. We have seen some guys go already, especially at the wide receiver spot. We saw some guys go, and same at the cornerback and on the defense as well. Where there are some holes on this team, pretty obvious ones being the linebackers and at the cornerback spot as well. I mean, looking at what I have on my paper right now for the 53-man roster, we should definitely make a trade or two, I believe, before the regular season starts, especially in that secondary and in the linebacker spot. So let's just get started here, starting off with the quarterback position. This is a pretty obvious one. You have Carson Wentz, of course, Taylor Heinicke making the team, and you have Sam Howell, of course. Maybe there was a little bit of question coming in the camp if Sam Howell was going to win the third quarterback spot, or if we are going to have three quarterbacks on the roster, which we usually do. But he is it's pretty obvious he's going to make the team, especially the game against the Ravens. We almost beat them. It was 17-15 on Saturday night. He had a great game. He played the entire thing. I mean, watching him, he could definitely be the future of Washington. Do I think so? There's still some questions. I don't think he should play at all this season, but I think Sam Howell definitely makes the team, and we're going to keep three quarterbacks right now. Those are the three that are on the roster currently, and they will be on the roster a week from now as well, heading into week one. And so now let's move on with the running back spot. By the way, I'm doing these in order. So the name I say first will be the starter, and then the name I say second will be the second string, third string, and so on. So at the running back spot, I have Antonio Gibson being our starter, J.D. McKissic at the second string spot, and Brian Robinson at the third string spot. So now Antonio Gibson, there's a lot of questions about whether he's going to be the starter, and I think they're going to announce him as a starter on the depth chart. Will I think he's going to get the majority of carries? Probably not, as Ron Rivera did say that it will be a committee here in Washington, and Brian Robinson has shown why he can be definitely a threat in the offense. I think Brian Robinson should get the start week one. I think he will get the majority of carries week one, depending on what the game plan is. Antonio Gibson's just fumbled way too many times here in training camp and in the preseason games. We saw it happen last season as well. We saw what Gibson could become, but now with Brian Robinson drafting him in the third round is a little bit questionable at the time. But right now, I actually like the pick, and even though there were some other holes that we could have filled with that third round pick, Brian Robinson could definitely be a threat come week one. So it'll be Gibson 1, McKissic 2, and Brian Robinson at the 3 spot. Now, some big cuts here. This is where things start to get a little bit interesting. I'm looking at the unofficial depth chart right now that the Commanders have on their website, and some guys that will get cut here. Jonathan Williams, right now he's listed as the 4th string. He's wearing number 41. He's had a pretty productive camp. I would probably expect us to sign him to the practice squad if he's eligible. If not, he'll probably sign with another team that needs a running back. Same with Jared Patterson. I like Jared Patterson a lot last season. I think we're definitely going to bring him onto the practice squad, or at least sign him to our practice squad. But I'm pretty confident he'll sign to another team because last season he showed some flashes. And even though we're going to cut him because we drafted Brian Robinson, of course, that's why it's a little bit questionable with the pick. I think Jared Patterson could be a productive piece elsewhere or on a different team. And then we also we're going to probably cut Reggie Bonafan as well. I don't really know much about him. I know he got a good amount of carries in that game against the Ravens on Saturday. But besides that, it's going to be pretty obvious. I don't think he's going to make the team. So with that being said, let's move on to the wide receiver spot. We got Terry McLaurin at the 1, Jahan Dotson. I have him listed above Curtis Samuel on my depth chart. And then after Samuel, I have Cam Sims at the 4 spot, Dyami Brown, who did not have the greatest of games against Baltimore. I have him at the 5 spot. And then at the 6 spot, which a lot of people are going to be competing for, those 5 are kind of locks. But at the 6 spot, I have Dax Milne. I think Milne has definitely played himself into a 53-man roster spot here in this preseason. If we go back to probably before the first preseason game, it was probably going to be someone else in that 6 spot. But Dax Milne, his ability on special teams to return punts, return kicks, are definitely a big boost, as Ron Rivera and company and the coaching staff really like wide receivers and stuff that can return punts. So same with Jahan Dotson, and maybe we see a little bit of Curtis Samuel. I know he's done it a little bit in the past, but Jahan Dotson as well will probably return some punts or kicks this year as well. So the cuts at the wide receiver spot is going to be Marken Michel at number 19. He's had some flashes in camp. He's dropped some, but he's also been able to go up and catch it like Terry McLaurin. which I really like to see. I don't know if he's going to get a spot elsewhere. I don't think so, but he's probably going to get cut. Kyrick McGowan, he's probably going to get cut as well. He wears number 83. He's been returning punts and kicks a lot in training camp. So I don't know if some special teams might be able to get him onto another roster, but I expect him probably on a practice squad or two. Alex Erickson, it was one of the first free agent signings back in March or April, I believe, when we signed him. And I mean, I don't really know why we signed him. He's probably not going to make the team. He wears number 86 if you've seen him on TV. I don't think he's going to make this team. Maybe he does elsewhere. He looked like kind of Adam Humphries like from last year in the final preseason game in Baltimore, but I just don't think it's going to be enough to make the team. And then finally, Matt Cole, he's wearing number 18 for Washington. He did play in that third preseason game. I don't think it'll be enough from his performance as well. I did believe he did have a big play, but I just don't think it's going to be enough. So I think we're going to carry six wide receivers and 3 running backs, 3 quarterbacks so far. We're also going to be carrying 3 tight ends. We did this last year. It's going to be Logan Thomas and John Bates. Those 2 were on the team last year. Of course, we had Ricky Seals-Jones. He's now in New York. And then for the third spot, Thomas at the starting spot, of course, and the backup being John Bates, who will be returning to practice this week. The third spot will be Cole Turner, the 5th-round rookie out of Nevada. He has had a great camp so far, although he has been on the sideline a lot. I want to see him healthy and be ready 100% for week 1 because we've had a lot of history for our tight ends being hurt. Logan Thomas has a big injury history. John Bates, all training camp, hasn't really been practicing that much, and same with Turner. So I would like to see just an entire group healthy come week 1. It's going to be interesting to see if Thomas will be set for week 1. He's not on the PUP list right now, so he's going to be eligible as of now, but I think he's going to be ready. He got taken off, so he should be good for the game against Jacksonville. So now let's move on to the offensive line, starting with Charles Leno at starting left tackle. Leno had a great season last year. He re-signed with Washington. He was on a prove-it deal last year. Re-signed with Washington on a 3-year deal back in February. And behind him will be Cornelius Lucas at left tackle. I mean, Ron Rivera and that offensive line coaching staff, they've done a great job at building up a lot of depth in that offensive line, as we've had a lot of injuries there in the past as well. So Cornelius Lucas is also a great guy to play left tackle. At left guard, we're going to have Andrew Norwell. We signed him last offseason. He's coming from, I believe, Jacksonville, one of the best offensive guards in Jacksonville back last season. And behind him, it's going to be a 6th-round rookie, Chris Paul. I mean, he's not the basketball Chris Paul, but I do think if we develop him, I think he can be a key backup on our team for the next few years to come. And so only 2 left tackles, only 2 left guards. At center, Chase Roulier and Keith Ismail. I think Roulier, he's one of the best centers in the NFL, a very underrated center. And for Keith Ismail, I think he will make the team, but I don't know if he's going to be on the team or on the practice squad, or maybe we cut him when Tyler Larson comes back, as Larson was put on the PUP list. Same with Chase Young, so they'll be out with the first 4 games at least. Now let's move on to right guard. Here I have Trey Turner. Of course, we signed him last offseason as well from Pittsburgh, and now he's been hurt throughout training camp. I don't even think he's been practicing. So it'll be interesting to see what happens if he's going to be ready for week 1. But behind him, Wes Schweitzer. I'm okay with Wes Schweitzer starting. Yes, he might be a little bit I believe he did start a little bit last year, actually, but that's going to be a little bit of a battle there. And I think Ron is really going to sub out those guys every couple plays or so. And then the third right guard is going to be the other Wes. He was on our team last year. Then I believe his contract was up. Wes Martin, we just re-signed him from Jacksonville, I believe. I believe it was Jacksonville who had him. Then they cut him. We brought him back. I predicted it. But I think he's going to make the 53-man roster, as we do have some injuries, of course, on that line. So I think Wes Martin, especially at a guard spot with a lot of injuries, could be coming in week 1 if Trey Turner isn't ready for week 1, and if Andrew Norwell also isn't ready for week 1. All right, so let's move on to the final offensive line spot, the right tackle position. Sam Cosmi, the 2nd-round pick from last season, is going to be our starting right tackle. He showed a lot of promise last year. Definitely things to work on, but he's going to be starting at right tackle, and behind him will be Sadiq Charles. Of course, was on the team last year. He's been on the team for a couple years now. No really surprises there, as that will wrap things up here for the offense. In total, I have 26 players on the offense. Before we move on here to the defense, of course, we have Joey Slye, Tress Way, and Cameron Cheeseman are all going to make the team for special teams. So that's 29 total. That leaves 24 spots for the defense. And here's how it's going to turn out. At the defensive line spot, it'll be Montez Sweat, and behind him, Casey Tuhill, James Smith-Williams, and Shaka Toney will be the other three backups with Chase Young out. Again, Chase Young does not count to the 53-man roster because he's on the PUP list, or PUP list, of course, like I like to call it. But since he's out, Montez Sweat starting, and then Casey Tuhill will start over James Smith-Williams. I believe some guys that will get cut here: Will Bradley King, Jacob Panasluk. Sorry if I mispronounced the name. But, I mean, really no big surprises. I think it's going to be those four guys. And then maybe Shaka Toney gets cut once Chase Young comes back, or Shaka Toney goes on practice squad if he's eligible. But no really big surprises there. All right, so now let's move on to defensive tackle. I have Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Fedarian Mathis, all locks to make this team. Then David Bada and Daniel Wise being the other two. A big piece that wouldn't be cut, kind of a surprise cut, F.A. Obada, who's had a very great last two preseason games. But I think we're just going to cut him for some cap reasons. I believe his cap hit is just a little over $1 million. So I think if it's a decision between Obada and then David Bada and Daniel Wise, Obada, I believe, has the most cap hit out of all of them. So I think we're going to cut him there. And now let's move on to linebacker. Cole Holcomb, Jamin Davis, David Mayo are going to be the three starting linebackers, of course. This does not look great. Cole Holcomb is going to be a free agent after this season. We haven't even, I believe, started talking with him about re-signing, so that could be an issue come down the road. Jamin Davis, of course, he's looked a little bit better here in these preseason games, but I don't really know if it's what the coaching staff has wanted him to do. He is moving back to his outside linebacker spot, and Cole Holcomb will be moving inside to play middle linebacker. David Mayo will be on the opposite side of Cole Holcomb, adjacent to Jamin Davis, playing his outside linebacker spot as backing them up will be Khaleke Hudson and Dijon Harris. Those will be the two other linebackers. Khaleke Hudson, of course, I think is a lock to make this team. Dijon Harris, maybe not. But I think we're going to keep 5 linebackers here. It could be a little bit interesting keeping only, I believe, 5 defensive tackles and then 5 linebackers instead of 6 defensive tackles and 4 linebackers. But I just think this is how it's going to turn out. Now moving on here to the cornerbacks. Kendall Fuller is a lock. William Jackson a lock. Benjamin St. Juste is a lock. And then for the other 2 guys, I have Corn Elder making the team. He has had a great camp. I think he's going to make it. And then Danny Johnson, he's been a veteran on this team. I think he's going to make it over a 7th round pick, I believe. Christian Holmes, I think he was a 7th round pick. Yeah, a 7th round pick from this year. Christian Holmes, I think Holmes will be on our practice squad. I believe he's the only rookie to not make the 53-man roster spot, at least the only rookie that we drafted. All right, let's move on to the final 2 positions, the safeties. At strong safety, I have Cam Curl starting and then Derek Forrest to back him up. Pretty simple there. I don't think there's really any surprises. Ferret Gardner and then Stephen Parker is probably a big-time cut. Stephen Parker has had a great few preseason games. He was great in the game against the Panthers, pretty solid in the game against the Chiefs, but I just don't think there's any room on this team for him. Another cut, I forgot to mention, Josh Drayden at cornerback. Milo Eifer at middle linebacker is going to get cut as well. I forgot to mention those guys. But Stephen Parker is a guy that I would love to see if he's eligible. I'm not 100% sure. I'd love to see him on the practice squad in case of emergency, because I think he could be a great fit, and he showed a lot of promise throughout these last few preseason games. And then let's move on to free safety. Bobby McCain will be the starter there for Washington. Percy Butler will be the backup. Butler has been able to play some special teams. He did have a penalty call against him, I believe. Same with Christian Holmes, which is a big reason why Holmes will not make this team. Percy Butler, I think, will be a guy that he can play special teams, but he's got to clean up some of his penalties that have happened here in the last few preseason games. And then we're going to carry 3 free safeties, I believe. Jeremy Reeves will be the other one. Reeves has had a pretty solid camp and stuff. Nothing too crazy, but he's a veteran. He knows the playbook and everything, which is why I think he can move between free safety and strong safety, just kind of do whatever he wants there. And like I mentioned before, Joey Sly will be our kicker. Tress Way will be our punter. Cameron Cheeseman will be the long snapper. And Chase Young and Tyler Larson. Again, some of these guys will get cut because we're going to have to make 2 cuts when Chase Young and Tyler Larson come back off the PUP list. Well, like I said, they're going to be out for the first few games. That's going to be Jacksonville for week 1, Detroit for week 2, Philadelphia for week 3, and Dallas for week 4. So those are some very important games as we could probably go 2-2 in those, or 3-1 maybe. So we're gonna have to do it though without Chase Young and of course the backup center Tyler Larson as well. So, like I mentioned before, the practice squad. Here are some guys that I think we should bring onto the practice squad if they're eligible. Again, I'm not 100% sure how it works. I believe you have to be in the first or second year. It's something around that, but I think we should bring back Christian Holmes. I mentioned this before, the seventh round pick from this past draft. He hasn't really showed a lot of flashes. He's had a lot of penalties against him, but we can develop him and see if he turns into something. Alex Erickson, I don't know if he's eligible, but I think we should bring him back. He has that uh uh what do you call it? Special teams ability. I forgot the words there, but he has the returning ability, and he's been returning punts and kicks for Washington for the last few preseason games. Stephen Parker I already mentioned. Alex Akinbulu, the right tackle. We can bring him, or right tackle, or right guard, I believe. We can bring him to the practice squad. I think he was in the USFL last year. Same with Stephen Parker, but I think Akinbulu can maybe be a depth piece if he doesn't get signed somewhere else, which I don't think he will. Third string or fourth string center, I guess, John Toth, I think, or John Toth. I don't think he's going to be making the team. He had a pretty bad game against the Ravens on Saturday night, had a lot of penalties against him. It just did not look good at all. I think he basically just played himself out of a spot, and which kind of locked up Keith Ismail as our backup center, in my opinion. And then, of course, wide receiver Markin Michelle. I'm not sure if we can bring him back, but I think if we can sign him to the practice squad, that'd be great because he did show some flashes, especially that one Saturday night at FedEx Field for the open practice. And then running back Jared Patterson, I mentioned him before, but I'm pretty confident Jared Patterson will sign with another team, and I'm going to be rooting for him because he was a great surprise last year, an undrafted rookie. When Antonio Gibson went down and then Jaden McKissick went down for a little bit, Patterson really stepped up, and I believe he even started a game and had a pretty solid game as well. But yeah, that's who I think we should sign to the practice squad if they're eligible. Again, not 100% sure how it works, but I think some of those guys are definitely eligible to be on the practice squad. I think we should definitely bring in some guys and keep an eye on the waiver wire, especially for the linebacker position and the cornerback position, as those are clearly our two weakest positions on this team. I think our offense looks great. I mean, Gibson, of course, there's some questions surrounding him, but I feel pretty confident in J.D. McKissick and Brian Robinson to back him up. The offensive line, I think, is one of the most underrated in the NFL. You got Charles Leno, Andrew Norwell, and Chase Roulier. Those are three of the most underrated offensive linemen in the game, I would say, right now. Sam Cosmi, a right tackle, could have a breakout year. Trey Turner, Wes Schweitzer, it's going to be interesting to see, as Turner didn't have a great year last year, but he signed a prove-it deal. We'll see what happens with him. The defensive line looks pretty good. Cole Holcomb, we should really re-sign him because if we don't, we gotta draft a middle linebacker next year, like Noah Sewell or someone, because our linebackers are not looking great. Cornerbacks, of course, besides the first three or first two, but in Fuller and Jackson, St. Juice could have a breakout season. Didn't have the best last year, but he had two concussions. Corn Elder and Danny Johnson will be the other two, of course. Safety's looking pretty solid, especially at the starting positions. And besides that, yeah, that's going to do it. We're going to see what happens. This is going to be an early morning episode, I believe, coming out 9 a.m. on Monday. So the deadline to cut the team down from 80 to 53 is Tuesday at 4 p.m. We will see what happens. Next episode will be pretty much game week, pretty much, for Jacksonville. So I'm excited for that. Thank you guys for watching another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. See you guys in the next one. Peace.